Hey guys, Jarek here. A few weeks ago, DICE did an update for Battlefield 4, and this added Gunmaster into Battlefield 4. What Gunmaster is gun game. I'm not sure why they called it something else. Funny story, for the longest time I kept reading it as Gunmeister. Don't know why I did that. But needless to say, I was kind of excited about this. I dropped Battlefield 4 for a long time ago. I was a little annoyed at the problems around it. I'll delve into this a little bit more, but I'm happy gun game is in this game. If you know me, you know I love gun game. In fact, in my opinion, I think gun game should be a standard game mode in any shooter released. It is a great game mode. I love Counter-Strike for starting it. I love Counter-Strike for popularizing it. Even if I don't really care for Counter-Strike itself, I still respect that game, and I love this game mode. But I can't help but feel a little bit disappointed after playing it for, I think, 3 or 4 hours. The reason gun game worked so well in Battlefield 3 is because there was an expansion tied with it, a CQB expansion. Maps came with gun game that were made for infantry gameplay. Battlefield 4 does not have this luxury. It just throws you onto the domination and team deathmatch maps, which I've always felt just kind of shoehorned in, too wide open, not enough cover, too much of a clusterfuck for that to really work in Battlefield 4. You can't ever get one-on-one with someone. You always get shot in the back by 5 of his teammates. It just never really worked very well when it comes to Battlefield 4. Whereas in Battlefield 3 it worked great because there were maps made specifically for that type of action. That's why I liked gun game though. I'm an infantry-centric person. I do not like snipers, I do not like vehicles, and that is one of my biggest problems with Battlefield 4. People tell me all the time, but Battlefield 4 has been fixed, you should go back and play it again. All the problems are not there anymore. Which, to that I would say, bullshit. There's still a lot of problems in Battlefield 4. The hit registration is still really messed up. It's still not as good as it was in Battlefield 3 of all games. Even Battlefield 3 feels way more polished. I actually still like Battlefield 3 and might go back to playing it again. It still has problems. It's not as bad as it was, and I will give them credit for adding in a lot to the game and continuously updating it. But it's still... the problems are still there. And it does make the game less fun. But the main thing, I could ignore all that. The main thing about Battlefield 4 that really annoys me is just the maps. The map design is so bad for someone that likes infantry. And people generally get mad when I say this for some odd reason, but when it comes to a Battlefield game, it's not just about vehicles. I understand it's large-scale combat, but Battlefield 3 nailed this. What Battlefield 3 did is that it had maps that you could go infantry only if you want to and succeed, but it also allowed you to go vehicle only if you want to and do well. The maps were balanced very well. It feels like the maps in Battlefield 4 just were very rushed. There's not enough cover, they're very open, it's a sniper's wet dream, and someone that likes tanks. If you like tanks, you're probably going to like Battlefield 4, but unfortunately, like I said, for infantry people like me, it doesn't work. And this translates over to gun game as well. The maps are not made for this game mode, and I can still kind of have fun playing this game mode, much more than core Battlefield 4. But really all it makes me want to do is go back and play Battlefield 3, or even play Hardline more. I like Hardline more than this game. And speaking of Hardline, let's talk about Hardline a little bit. Because if you have been following Hardline, you know that Hardline at this point is practically dead on PC, which makes me sad a little bit, because I actually liked it. But why is it dead? I've heard people talking about this, but no one's mentioned a very specific point. Let's talk about what they usually say. Let's say, people usually say Hardline died because it's not worth the price, and that's a valid point. I think Hardline would have done much better if it was a $20 to $30 expansion for Battlefield 4, much like what they did with Bad Company Vietnam. Everyone loved Vietnam. Well, not everyone loved the Vietnam War, but everyone loved Bad Company Vietnam. It wasn't overpriced, it just worked. If they did that with Hardline, I think it would have done a lot better. Weapon balance is another problem that Hardline has. Everyone knows this by now, kind of beating a dead horse, but let's go over the weapons that you should use in Hardline, which ones are the best, and you should literally be using nothing else other than these weapons. So for the Assault class, you have the M416, the AKM, and the M16. These are blatantly better than every other assault rifle in the game. You have no reason to use anything else. For the Mechanic class, the K10 is blatantly better than all the other submachine guns, although I think this problem is a little bit exaggerated because a lot of the PDWs are actually very good and underrated. The MPX, for example, is another very, very good PDW, or the MP5K. A lot of them can be used, But the fact of the matter is that the K10 is still the best. It's ridiculous how easy this is to use. You just point and shoot, and it sprays out 20 bullets within a second, and the person falls over dead in front of you, and then it takes almost no time to reload. So, blatantly the best thing for that class. For the Enforcer class, the SPAS 12 is the only semi-automatic shotgun in the game, has a higher capacity than all the other ones, and has just as much range as all the other pump actions. So why would you use anything else? Alright, that is if you were on the right team to be able to use it, because for some reason they decided, let's add one semi-automatic shotgun in the entire game and give it to only the criminal side. Because that makes sense. They should have added something like a Benelli M4 for the cop side instead of making it only one semi-auto that is blatantly better than all the other shotguns. Also on the Enforcer side, the SA-58 is better than all the other battle rifles, which is, again, only for one team. It has the same damage as the other battle rifles, a faster rate of fire, and the same recoil, so why would you use anything else? And then for the professional side, my goodness, I don't even know where to start with this. The fucking 300 knockout in the MAC-10 is the most frustrating combination in that entire game. That sniper can kill you from one shot to the chest up to 50 meters away. That is absolutely ridiculously overpowered. I don't know who thought this would be a good idea. I've actually had people trying to argue with me on my gun guide for the 300 knockout, saying it's not overpowered because the bullet velocity is slower. First off, I'm going to be a little bit rude here. You're wrong. You are flat out wrong. Best sniper in the game. Look at the stats that I show on the screen. It is overpowered as shit. When you're comparing weapons and figuring out what's overpowered and what isn't, you have to assume that person is going to be the best possible. You have to look at the times to kill of the weapon, not the bullet speed. And if they are perfect to the chest, not even to the head, the 300 knockout will beat a Chris up close. That is stupid. It is a quickscoper's wet dream. It really, really shouldn't happen, and definitely does need a nerf. It is overpowered. And then if you even get up close anyway, they can just pull out their MAC-10 and spray. They don't even need to be good at the game. So other than those weapons, there's nothing else to use. Those are the best weapons in the game. You have no reason to use anything else because you're just putting yourself at a handicap. So in that regard, weapon balance is a little bit fucked in that game. Actually, very fucked. I thought DICE was bad at weapon balance. Visceral's even worse. So that's a valid problem, but the thing I want to talk about with Battlefield Hardline, and this is what no one talks about, it's a niche game. It has a specific player involved when talking about that game. It is a very much so almost infantry-only game. And most people that play Battlefield aren't infantry-only people. Most people that play Battlefield like to be one of those clueless dumb snipers in the back of the map that really aren't good at the game and don't help the team when you're trying to play Rush or Conquest. They like to take the tank into the middle. They like, you know, you don't have those options when it comes to Battlefield Hardline. And that's the reason I love Hardline. It seems like it was catered directly to me. No real major threats with vehicles, purely infantry combat. That's what I want in a shooter. I don't like vehicles, I don't like snipers, I don't like having a ton of space between me and my enemy, which is what Battlefield 4 does to me, even in Domination and Conquest. There is usually a ton of range between me and the other person. Battlefield 3 nailed it perfectly, so I don't know why they seem to be intent on doing one or the other now. But that's the main reason I think that Hardline is failing. It's a very select amount of people that it is being advertised towards. If you aren't the person that likes infantry combat, or you're not particularly good with using a PDW up close, and you're more of a sniper or DMR person, or you're someone that likes to play defensively on an assault rifle, infantry stuff, you're not going to like it. You're just going to feel frustrated. Just as I feel frustrated trying to play core Battlefield 4 on Gulmud Railway. Now that's the main reason I don't really like Battlefield 4, and despite the fact the gun game is added into it, I might not continue playing it. Furthermore, I might jump into a few games of Domination or Team Deathmatch just to majorly see how much of that has changed, but from the 4 or 5 hours I played today, Battlefield 4 still has the problems that made me stop playing it months ago. Hit registration is terrible, the gunplay itself feels really wonky and wrong. People usually say that Battlefield 3 feels weird when it comes to the gunplay. Like, people legitimately seem to be bad at Battlefield 3. I don't know what it is about it. Now, honestly, I can't even think of a reason as to why. But I am way better at Battlefield 3 and Battlefield Hardline than I am at Battlefield 4. Battlefield 3 especially, I feel like I can take anyone on in that game. And I think the main reason is because the way Battlefield 3 does recoil is way different than Battlefield 4 and Hardline. It tends to kind of auto-center your shooting. I actually prefer this, and I didn't even realize it did that, but it feels natural to me. That's what I'm used to. So, not sure why it changed, but hey, people don't seem to like it, people seem to like the change, so maybe I'm just the weird one out. I'm genuinely curious to see what people think. I know everyone's basically going to say Bad Company 2 is the best Battlefield game, it was the most fun. I personally myself prefer Battlefield 3. I liked Vietnam and Bad Company 2, don't get me wrong, they were really fun. And I definitely miss the destructible environments that almost vanished entirely in Battlefield 3. But something about Battlefield 3, the gunplay felt more enjoyable to me. Maybe it has to do with more attention to detail of the weapons. I like guns. Having a empty reload compared to a non-empty reload is something that is going to make me appeal more to your game. Something about it just looks more believable, and I know that's against the point of Bad Company 2. It's supposed to be this weird, amazing, goofy Hollywood-type shooter, which, you know, that's fine. It was fun for what it was, but something about Battlefield 3 just feels more, I don't want to say more comfortable, but more appealing, just by looks and just by playing it. So that's still my favorite Battlefield game. I can't really express that much more. I genuinely enjoyed Battlefield 3. Conquest was my game. The only thing about Bad Company 2 that I preferred way over Battlefield 3 was Rush. Because, well, Rush kind of wasn't very good after Bad Company 2. They didn't really make maps specifically for Rush. And I really, really wish that DICE and Visceral would stop trying to shove everything into a few maps. You need to make maps for a specific thing, and that was the whole point of this game. Gun game doesn't really work very well if you try to just use these weird team deathmatch maps that are in all reality just parts of bigger Conquest maps that were already too open to begin with. It doesn't work. You have to do what Battlefield 3 did and make specific maps for it. I really feel like by them trying to just make maps that work for every single game mode instead of making specific maps for Rush and Gun Game and Team Deathmatch and Domination and Conquest and all this extra stuff, by not taking the extra time, the game, one, becomes less polished and not a full release, and two, they alienate players like me that want to look for that infantry-only stuff, or the players that want that vehicle-only stuff. And they did that, like I said many times before, they did that in Battlefield 3. They had their Armored Assault, they had the CQB stuff. They wanted to do specific things, and then Battlefield 4, it kind of became this awkward all-in-one. Battlefield 4 lacks the specific feel about it that Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 had. And people that have played those games know what I mean. When you play Bad Company 2, this is Bad Company 2. It's the Bad Company 2 you love. When you play Battlefield 3, it felt unique when it first came out. This is this Battlefield 3. Battlefield 4 just felt like an unpolished version of Battlefield 3. And it doesn't have that draw to it, to me. And it just simply ended up being more frustrating than fun. But I guess the main point of that was gun game is in Battlefield 4. I am happy they added it in, but it just makes me want to go back and play Battlefield 3 gun game instead. Something else I don't really understand is that EA seems to be completely content with letting Hardline die. This really confuses me. At this point, they should have had a free weekend or a free week to bolster the numbers of the amount of people playing Hardline on PC, but they haven't. Why? Is it because maybe they have pride on the line? No, our brand new game, the one that we advertised and hyped up, it's doing perfectly fine. Please ignore the player count. Everything is okay. Is that the reason? Or are they just fine with having a quick cash grab and nothing more? What are they going to do with the premium that everyone got? Do they still plan on doing the 4 DLC things? What are they going to do with that? Are they just going to cancel all of it? I know they won't refund people premium. I know that much. This is EA we're talking about. So I don't know what they're doing with Hardline. I know some of the reason as to why it failed, being so specific on the type of player that wants to play Hardline, not really being the typical Battlefield player. But it's weird. Anyway, this has been some gun game. Hope you guys have enjoyed me ranting about the game for the last 15 minutes, and I will see you guys next video.